G'day. During the week, this arrived in the mail. It's a French clog-maker's knife, or as they call clogs in France, sabot. I will be using it to carve lasts for my customers. But before I can do that, I need to get familiar with how to use this. So I'll be making just a quick last to try out the blade. I'm using a piece of poplar here, well seasoned. It's not what they made lasts out of, but I'm just practicing, getting to know my Sabot knife and what I need to do in order to achieve the results that I'm after. The knife has a T-shaped handle, and for clarity we'll call the part closest to the camera the front and the part nearest me the back. At the moment I have my hand on the front half of the handle, right there, and this causes the blade's edge to turn into the work, giving a much stronger bite. Having said that, hand placement doesn't preclude being able to do other types of shavings with it. It just means that placement lends itself towards a particular type of bite. So I've moved my hand back into the middle to achieve a finer cut. So I have a piece of bark coming up that I want to remove, so I shift back to the front of the handle, and that will enable me to take the deeper cut required. Here I have my hand back in the middle to take some finer shavings off, just cleaning up and rounding up the log. And we'll speed it up a bit, working on the flat split side, just to not bore everybody to tears. You'll notice as I'm doing this that I'm regularly moving the knife up and down a series of holes in the vertical block. Most clog-makers' knives have a hook that goes through an eye fixed down at bench height. Now watch what happens here as I move my hand. Just shifted to the front there and it's just bitten in really, really deep. Should have stayed in the middle. This is not going to be a real last. It's just me practicing with that. I'll be making what's known as a bark-bottomed last and split out a wedge to work from. Because I'm just trying this out, it's just a quick, basic concept sketch. Here I'm using the part of the blade closest to the vertical block, because this gives me probably about a 6-to-1 leverage and enables me to cut down across the grain. The pencil you see me using I've modified by taking all the wood off one side of it, so that when I'm tracing around someone's foot, there's no parallax error. Now we're into the bulk removal to get down to the basic line of the last, and as you can see as we bite in, the wood splits out along its grain, which is okay in certain circumstances. There's something you've really got to watch out for when you get into the trickier parts. So much easier and faster than the draw knife and the shaving horse I've been using up until now. I'm about to put some toe spring under the front of the last, which helps in smoothness of walking and keeping the upper of the shoe in a nice smart condition. I'm working into the arch area. Because I'm cutting down into the grain, I'm having to work a little bit from each direction so as not to cause any splitting out. Now squaring up the last between the heel and the ankle area on both sides. Once you've shaped out the maximum width of the heel, you then have to hollow out between the heel and the ankle. My left hand isn't actually as close to the blade as it looks. taking fine shavings minimises the risk of it splitting out on me. Now smoothing out the transition between the hollowed out area and the widest part of the heel. I find this huge knife's ability to go from taking great big slices of timber off to the finest of little scrolls amazing. Most of what follows is variations from what you've already seen, so unless it's something different, I'll let the pictures do the talking. Rounding out the transitions between the sides and the top surface of the last. Moving up to a higher hole here enables me to get the blade around the instep area, or cone as it's known on a last, and to be able to shave down on the opposite side of it. Here I am using my thumb on the back of the blade for some very fine control. Here I'm using a Swiss tool called a scorp to round out some areas that I found too difficult to get the Sabot knife into. .80 grit sandpaper, first just held in the hand and then wrapped around a block. When I'd finished all the coarse sanding, I went over it again with 120 grit garnet paper. The shape of the instep didn't work out quite the way I wanted it to. If you look halfway between the highest point of the last and the tip of the toe, you'll see that it flattens out a little. I'll explain what I did about it next. I wasn't happy with the shape of the instep here. It came out like that. So I drew in the profile that I wanted and modified it. So I'll show you how I did it. I won't carve out the wood, but you'll see the process. So let's say we want the instep to be even steeper than that. So we start off at the midline. Now what you can see is what I can see. You come down and you map in your new profile and then blend it out going back to the midline. Alright, so we've now got a new profile line just there, which looks like that from above. Now we copy it as carefully as we can. Just round that slightly, come down like this, out to the side. Okay, so we have a long teardrop shape now. It looks like I started a little bit over the midline here. That's easy enough, we'll just move just a tiny bit there. There we go. So the other side should have more or less the same profile. What you do now is you take your knife, whether it's a great big sabot or block knife, or whether you just have a simple carving knife, and you carve down to follow the line. You flatten it right within this perimeter so that it becomes a straight line across from there to there all the way along. Once you've done that, that gives you a new profile shape, and then you proceed to slice sideways like that to blend it in and sand it in. But that's basically how I changed the Instep profile from sort of that to the one that I now have. That was my first in-depth use of my new Sabot knife, coming to grips with the different actions I need to do in order to carve a fairly complicated shape. I'm looking forward very much to using that on my orders. Thank you very much for watching.